now about to witness.
What it do, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is time for King Conversation, the last Wednesday of the month. I'm your host, Mark Wiggins, Off the Bench Magazine, coming to you live and direct from my studios in Virginia. Just want to welcome everybody to the program. It's been a minute since I had a good King Conversation on to do. I usually try to bring on guests that have something to say. Definitely some King discussion that is definitely needed in our environment today, in our communities today. There are a lot of great kings out here with messages and words of wisdom to help sharpen the steel of other kings. I mean, let's be clear about this. Sometimes a message can only be sent by a king to another king in a way that I can receive it, right? So certain people can speak to me in such a way that I listen. Young, old, doesn't matter. I've gotten some great messages from people younger than me, definitely people older than me, and I hope I've imparted some wisdom on some other people, just to let them know that, hey, you're not alone in this struggle. You're in this thing. You got a job to do. You have a kingdom to run. You have a responsibility as the king to take care of the people, the subjects, and the territory. And you put those in however you want to work that out. But again, welcome to the Off the Bench show. Make sure you go to the website, offthebenchmagazine.com. Make sure you subscribe to the magazine. The subscription is free. And there's no real reason that you shouldn't have it. Help me boost my numbers and boost the reach, because we got some great content in the magazine, great writers, people who've been with me since day one. You got the Woke Wednesdays that come out every Wednesday. If you've not received yours today, probably because you weren't a subscriber. We have Nicole the Candace, who's stepping in this month as I'm on sabbatical, like the preachers do, taking the month off. And she's dropping some good heat, and you definitely want to hear from her. So make sure you go and subscribe to that as well. Also, we're putting a call out for authors for the King Conversations, the anthology, the book. Some of you have seen the advertisement on the webpage, and some got emails. What I'm asking for are the kings to come on and share their story, right? The thing that someone told you, that grandmama and them taught you, that Big Daddy taught you, that you learned along the way, some mentor gave you a nugget that you live by today. Like, this is your code, this is your creed, or a story of triumph, overcoming. How'd you get up off the dirt that one last time? What was it that helped you get off the bench? We want that in the story. I want to be able to put this book together and give it to a young king or young princess somewhere and say, here, read about some good strong men, right? Let's read about some men that they ain't showing you on social media. I mean, we're popping them now. I see a lot of positive images on men, but, you know, for a minute, we ain't presented in the positive light. We give them the content, unfortunately. But there's still a great positive force out there, and that's this book. So, you know, women, I know you're out there watching. Please, thank you for watching. Share with your kings and tell them to get in this magazine. This book is definitely something they need to do. Early pre-announcement, shouts out. The Extreme Business Conference is coming to Washington, D.C., June 2024. Working on a lot of stuff. You see me making a lot of moves right now, a lot of activity, rooftops, shows, interviews. I got the interview on Friday in Baltimore. We're doing the Mark Wiggins show. Ooh. I'll be interviewing some business owners up in Baltimore, and we're doing it live. You know, we're doing what I do best. This is what I do, that and speak. And so we're taking it up, but we are putting it all together. We're going somewhere with this, and where we're going is a business conference here in DC, June 2024. More details to follow. All right, let's get to it. Tonight, I don't know what words I want to use. I think I'm just going to say I'm humbled and blessed, right? I'm humbled and blessed at this point. that one of the neighborhood homies, young bucks that was behind us, who watched all the things we did and came to me just recently. He's like, yo, Mark, I'm ready to tell my story. And the brother has a story to tell, and I will not do it justice. As you know, I don't do bios, but I'm going to bring to the screen my man, Idris Amin. Good brother, how are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, bro. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so glad that you were here today. Again, I'm just humbled, bro. I know you have a lot to say. I've watched you and your brother live next to my mom's in Maple, so we connected and go way back, way back, way back, way back. So what I'm gonna do is I don't do bios, so I'm gonna turn it over to you and share with us what you want to share, and let's talk about some stuff.
Okay. First thing I want to say is, man, that man, I'm very proud of you. Um,
Well, thank you.
I was one of the younger homies who saw you come up, man. From being a basketball star. Saw you have some monster games in high school against some rivals.
Right.
Um, I saw your character. I saw your principles. I saw your mannerisms, man. You were always a very cool brother, man. I never saw you get heated or explode on nobody. Always mild mannered and even tempered. And to see even you and your successes in life, it's one of those things where I'm not surprised, but
Mm,
I am proud. I'm glad that I was so closely affiliated with you as a youngster to be able to see and be able to emulate some of the things that you've been able to accomplish in your life. So, hats off to you, my brother.
bless you. Thank you, King.
Yeah, no doubt. So, let's see my story. It starts off when I was born, man. I was born. I was from the '70s, baby. Um, Came into the world with both my parents, which was a blessing and is a blessing. Um, and at the onset of my life, they were both very nurturing. My dad always worked. My mother was a housewife. Um, but as I got older, I started to notice some issues with my parents, namely my mom, well, and my dad. Um, I was introduced to them and drugs at a very young age. It started off with marijuana, hash. I don't know too many people still familiar with hash. Back in the day drug. That was the '70s drug.
Right.
But I would see them mix the weed with the hash and whatnot and get high for that. And then, of course, they eventually graduated to other drugs. But at the same time, simultaneously to that, my dad always worked. He always held a job. He always provided for our family while he was dealing with his demons. My mother was a little different because she was a housewife, so she was able to. She had opportunity to get very deep off into her addiction, or deeper, should I say, deeper than my dad did, because he had to be clean to work. So that presented a lot of challenges, a lot of trauma for me and my brother. I had one brother who's a little older than me. It presented a lot of problems, issues, and trauma for both of us coming up because as they got further into their addiction, our lives emulated the things that they were going to do. It was a natural progression, or a trickle down situation where, from them and their issues and problems, uh, some of the things that we would experience later in life started to manifest. So one of the things was that we started moving a lot. We saw a lot of different residences when I was a kid um, in the Cleveland area. I can recall off the top of my head us being in 6 different spots by the
Mm,
time I was 6, 7 years old. For various reasons. Of course, I didn't know then what they would have to move for, what we would have to move for, but there was a lot of different times that we could never really establish any stability as kids. And we eventually came out to Maple Heights because we had a connection. My parents both were raised in Maple Heights. Neither one of them were born there, but they were both raised there as youngsters. So my grandparents uh, had established houses there in the '60s, And so that was where the stability came from, and that was where the connection to Maple Heights came from for us. So eventually, in fourth grade, we wound up going to Maple Heights. We actually wound up going to the school at Rockside Elementary. And my first year in Maple Heights was fourth grade. My brother was fifth grade, and that was a culture shock because before then, I don't even remember even seeing a white person. But I
Right.
do remember the first day of getting to Rockside, getting called the N word, like right off the bus. As a matter of fact, it was a song that I was saying. It was nigger, nigger, nigger on the label, 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 something like that. And so this was my introduction to white society. Um, and so we managed to get past it and get through it, but that changed our outlook on life and being introduced to white people in some positive ways because there were some great teachers that we did encounter, but also such negative ways just because racism was so prevalent in that time, in that day and age. It was not like today. Well, it's becoming like that today, but it was
Mhm.
very blatant, open. They didn't try to hide it. There was no reason for them to hide it. They showed us how they felt about us readily. But even in that, there were some nice people, but that's unfortunately not what what stuck with me.
Mm.
Some of the nice people were cool, but the ones that were particularly mean, and it was the attitude of not only the kids but the adults that probably affected me the most coming up. But moving through that, other than that, one thing that Maple Heights did afford me was an opportunity to be around my family, even cousins. I had a close relationship with my cousins, so we actually stayed next door to one another, so we would be around each other pretty much every day. That and sports being a very good escape from what we were experiencing. My brother and I were experiencing at home. So we really got heavy off into sports based on that. Just trying to find some semblance of normalcy and accomplishment for some of the things that we tried to do. My dad was a very good athlete in Maple Heights, and in the late '60s, mid to late '60s, he was a very good athlete. He was a baseball player and a basketball player, and he had a lot of write-ups. So I guess one of the ways that we wanted to connect with our father and also connect with the community was to become good in sports. So we both got pretty decent in sports coming up, and we both focused on that. But there was also the drug culture, which in the mid '80s exploded.
Right.
Um, and the thing about myself was that when the drug culture exploded in the mid '80s, I had some inside information in regard to it because my parents were highly involved in it. They actually both became heavily addicted to crack as a with me as a teenager, and so those were some very interesting times for me because you have this culture exploding outside of getting money and all of the lavish things that come with that lifestyle and becoming basically rich. That was pretty much our key out of the ghetto. So we thought,
Mm.
knowing the real truths behind that. Even the fact that drugs were so prevalent in our communities, we had no clue how this was coming in, where it was coming from, the reasons why it was coming in. All we saw were the effects of it.
Hmm.
We were open to that, and we were open to what we were told this lifestyle brings to us, and what many of us saw. So at the age of 15, 16 is when I started selling drugs, really on a real small basis, just hand in hand combat. I would never do anything. I never did anything out of my house, but I was I have some friends who lived in Cleveland and in East Cleveland, and so I was pretty much introduced to the business side of it by them. And so I would go down to different areas of Cleveland. One is 105, 105th Street, and the Superior, between Superior and St. Clair.
Mm.
And that's where I kind of got my feet wet, or got my stripes in the game, was basically there. So I met a few people who connected me to some pretty heavy hitters in it, and I was able to elevate to a space where I was known and I was trusted, and I was just a hustler and a go getter. So I eventually got to a point where from I was going from just getting paltry amounts of product to getting a couple ounces at a time. And I even wound up getting an apartment building, which today they call a trap house. Back then it was a crack house. It was just a lot.
Right, right.
So I was able to secure one of those with one of my friends, and from there, man, we were probably making 10 grand every Saturday and Sunday, so each day. So out of from the week, we probably was doing 20, 30,000 out of this one apartment building, and we did that. We stayed there for about 6 months, and then at one point, some Jamaicans got a hold to us. Because they kind of ran this area. It was called the Cliffview Apartments, is where we were, and this was off of Euclid in Cleveland, close to East Cleveland. Might even be East Cleveland, but it was very close to it if it wasn't there. So they got wind of us. They had known about us for a while, but they just, I guess, one weekend they just decided they were going to take over, and I was fortunate enough not to be there that weekend. But my guy wasn't. He wasn't as fortunate as me. He was there, so the
Mm.
pistol whipped him, cracked his ribs and things of that nature, and took back over the apartment building from that point. So I had to move on, and from there, you know, I was introduced to several people in that area, and also back on the other side of town, closer to where I live, what we call up up the way. So that's kind of like in the area close to the southern suburbs of the city. So I was introduced to some guys that was hustling there. So I was able to keep going, and then not only that, but I was eventually introduced to. I had a friend who we both know, who was doing some time for a lot of time for murder. But this friend of mine, he actually introduced me to the robbing game. One day we were at his house, and he pulled out a bag of money, probably like the size of a shopping bag,
Hmm.
probably 60 grand in this bag. And of course, me, where'd you get this from? You know, and he's like, man, we hit this lick. He explained to me the whole breakdown. We set this dude up. He had a girlfriend that my dude liked. So the girl was telling, all of his business. And, we wound up knowing when he was going to be there, when he wasn't going to be there. And when he wasn't going to be there, we went in there, we got it safe. And from there, we just, just broke the money down every time. They probably got something like 300,000. And this is the thing about that is that drug dealers didn't use banks. So they would put their money in their mattresses.
Right.
And once somebody got wind of what they were doing, and once we got wind of what they were doing, they would get robbed. So, um, I was intrigued at that point, and I wound up going in a couple cases with him, and it was okay, but it really wasn't my thing. I wasn't that type of person because I always believed in hustling. I was the person who would who somebody would take from having, not the person who would take
Mm.
something from somebody else. So I learned that after probably a couple times trying it. But at any rate, I was at this point locked into the game. So what was going along with that is um, the fact that I have grandparents, parents who are very religious, you know, very religious grandparents, grandmother, grandfather was a hard worker. He held his job at GM and retired from GM, and this is what I saw and visualized as what a man was, not necessarily what I was doing. So I became conflicted with the life that I was living and the things that I knew were right, and the people that I knew who were doing the right things, even though they weren't making the money that I was making.
Mm.
That always was a conflict of interest with me. Once I was involved in it for a while, and so I started working. I had a brief stint in school, but I wasn't really motivated or interested to be in school at that point. I was just about getting money. So I came back after even prodding me to finish the semester. And I would have jobs, but I pretty much just used my jobs as fronts for my criminal activity. Um, and so I went on like that for a while until at a point where I actually was trying to get out of the game, but I had people that owed me money. One guy in particular owed me some money, and so um, I told myself, like I got to get this money from this dude one way or the other. And he was also a person who robbed places, so he came up with this idea to give me the money back, which was to hold up the Burger King or store, restaurants. So actually, I did this twice with him because he owed me a lot. He owed me somewhere in the neighborhood about 20 grand, which was a lot for him. So we did one. He did one and brought me the money back, and he brought me some of what he owed me. And then for a second time, he wanted to do another one to finish off what he owed me. Um, but for some reason, man, I didn't trust him at this point, so I decided to go along with him.
Mm.
And so when we got to the spot, um, it was something that in me that said that he wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to go through with it. And once we got there, I saw this happening. But at the same time, I will say this: at the same time, like I told you about the conflict, I was conflicted even about just being in this lifestyle and being in the gang. I never got gotten arrested for this activity, being doing any criminal behavior. Never got arrested for it up until this point. And so at the point right before the actual the actual thing went down, I said a prayer to myself. I said, God, please get me out of this situation. And so after that, I'm looking at this dude, and he just don't have that look in his eye, like he wanted to go down. I'm like, we here. So I said, man, give me the gun, man. Give me the gun, give me the mask. I see you hesitant, so I take both, and I step from out in the darkness on the dude, and I up pipe on him and do what I do. He throws the money back at it, back at me actually, and so we're going for our escape, and we're going through this area where I know that nobody's gonna see us, but for some reason, once again, I made that prayer. It came to me, you know, afterwards that this is why this happened because I came up in an area where I knew it was a chance that the police would see me if they were riding around looking for me. Instead of just staying in the area that I was at, which was a safe space, the space was so safe that I really could have just walked up into my house and nothing would ever have been known, you know. But I came up in an area where you familiar with where the playground.
Mm.
And so when I came up in that area, I'm walking through the course and I'm actually walking towards my house, which is on the street that the playground was on, which is the garage. And they see me. So they see me coming out. They put the spotlight on me coming out of the playground. And so I run back, into the area that was dark, which is like a rest and training areas, and I wound up getting caught there. And so I was the, I was the, no, what? I got caught. There was three of us. Two of us got caught. Um, and the person who I was saying was scared wound up, turning on me and letting everybody know that I did it. And I didn't do the same, so I wound up getting, the time for it. So I got 5 to 25 years for it because I had a gun, um, which is a gun spec. And so the gun spec gave me 3 years, which they allowed me to do concurrent with the 5 to 25. So I had to do a mandatory three before I could even be considered for parole or anything like that. And so I wound up going into the system. Probably a year or so after that, had a 6 month old son when I went into the system. Um, you know, Parents and all of that. Even though my parents were doing drugs and all of that, they still were very disappointed, very sad, very hurt. Grandparents hurt everybody that I had. That this was my fortune, and misfortune, every one.
Idris,
Yes,
let's put a pin in that right there. Let's run back because you've been. I'm sitting here enthralled by it because the rumors were running right. Everybody was. Oh, did you hear this? You're like, oh no, what?
for sure.
And
Yeah,
but what I really want to hear is it's interesting that you talked about culture. You talked about the environment in which we were in, that racist environment. And I always find it interesting how we were culturally diverse when we grew up.
hmm
We were not racially diverse.
right.
And for those who literally came over on boats, who were first generation, pick a nationality. Which one? Slovenian? You want Polish? You want Italian? Pick one.
Right.
Asian? Pick one. We all have friends in our arena that they had first generation. They were still speaking the native language in our home.
That's right. That's
And
right.
then
Yeah.
but they treat us like we were the ones that came over on. No, we was already here. See what I'm saying? And I always find it very, they want to assimilate to the culture of white America at that point, and they weren't white Americans,
Right.
right? They were
Yeah.
European or whatever else, and they
Right.
made us feel like we were wrong. We you know what I'm saying? And that's, and we see that today as you were talking about. It's just kind of sad that that goes on. Like, do y'all understand what your roots are? Do you really understand your history? Forget my history. Forget
Yeah.
Black history for a hot second. Do you know your history,
That's right.
Mister
That's right.
Mister Polish man, Mister Italian woman? Do you know your history? My
Mhm.
best friends, Tony and Roger. One was Italian. I go to Tony's house, and you talk about. We would joke about Tony and his father, like, oh my God, like dealing with the mob. Maybe,
Right.
maybe we all know a couple of folks
Right.
that were running numbers back in the day. They wasn't Black, and they were running numbers all down through the school. That's what they did, running crap games hard. So we were no different,
Right.
but they
That's
tried to
true.
make us be like we were just
Yeah.
so different because we were Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that, I found that interesting. You experienced the same thing I experienced a few years ahead of you, but you
Right.
experienced the same thing I was experiencing at a different level as you're going through that. And I find it interesting, like you said that prayer, and it's funny when we have to be careful. We pray and ask for
Yeah. Yeah.
it
I
because
remember when I was a kid, and I was mad at my brother for something. I don't even remember what he did. And I said, at the same time, I had to clean up some broken glass. So I might have been mad at him for that because he actually did it, broke it. My mother made me clean it up. So I said, I prayed. I said, I hope that he gets cut with this glass. And I be doggone, man. And I didn't do it. The glass was bagged up in a garbage bag. He walked over the glass and it cut his foot up real bad. And at that point, man, I realized the power of manifestation, the power of,
right, right,
you know what I mean? It came at a real odd time, but it was really prevalent in my life. It was a moment that let me know, man, you have to be careful what you put out into the universe because if you are connected, if you are connected to nature, to the
mm-hmm.
universe, your words will manifest. Whether they're
Mm-hmm.
positive words, negative words, they're going to turn into something. They're going to turn into some type of reality. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was fortunate enough once I got older and thought back on these lessons to use it because when I did come out, I used that power. I did. I used it to my benefit because I would pray for stuff and I would use the prayer make the prayer, but then use the prayer as a motivation for goal setting. And I can remember, praying and saying that I wanted to get a house a certain year. Maybe it was I was married at the point. I was saying I want to have a house. I want to buy a house this year. I want to buy a bigger house this year. And that same year, I wound up getting a house built. And so it just throughout my life, it just always came to me. And not only that, but I would try to not misuse that
Mm-hmm.
that thought or that truth
Right.
because I knew that once I said something, once I put something out into the universe, that it was going to manifest. Just maybe because of the way that I learned it, or maybe the way that I processed it. Once I did pray for it, but prayer is a very is an ally to us. It's a very powerful component for goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that once when we want to do something, that we say it, that we speak it out, so that you know not only people that we know or close to us can hear it, but so that the universe can hear it. And so because the universe picks up on our vibrations on an electromagnetic level. Once something's spoken out into the world, it goes into this electromagnetic wave. And any person or anything that is congruent with that wave that we put those words on is going to catch that sentiment, and they're going to start appearing in our lives and help us reach these goals. So it's very, very important that we not only know what prayer is and figure out what it is and how to do it, but that we utilize it and harness it in a way that it's helpful for us.
Mm-hmm. Idris, so before you became Idris, you was known as another person, right?
Right, right.
When did you? I know you said on way to got caught up, headed to jail. When did it change for you, and what helped you change?
Well, first of all, I was so we're talking about Islam, becoming Muslim. I did change my name legally in 2004 while I was incarcerated. But my journey toward Islam started long before that. It actually started from hip hop.
Hmm.
So in the late '80s, early '90s, we started rap was very positive, and we started hearing a lot of different messages in these songs. One of which was like freedom for Black people, resistance for Black people, revolution for Black people,
Hmm.
and a spiritual base for Black people. So groups like a Tribe Called Quest, a group called Rex and Effect. I don't know if you remember Rex and Effect. That was a group that Teddy Riley's younger brother, with a rap group that he was in.
Hmm.
And in this group, one of the songs of Rex and Effect was a song called Soul Man. And in the song Soul Man, one of the things he says is that his name was Arkel and that his brother's Idris. And so I said to myself, that name just hit me some kind of way.
Hmm.
And this had to have been probably 91, 90, 91, something like that. In the meanwhile, when I was 14 is when I joined the Nation of Islam. Um, but I was still in the streets. But so I was more attracted to it philosophically than spiritually. Just as a Black Power movement. So I studied under Farrakhan. I went to the temple. I learned the lessons. I even studied uh, what's called Clarence 13X and the 5% Nation. I studied a lot of that, studied the lessons, 120 lessons of that. And that basically is a concept that says that um, there are 100% out of the 100% of the people in this world, 85% of those people are the lost. Um, and the remaining 15%, 10% of those people are the ones who know the truth, but keep the truth from us. And out of the remaining 5% are the righteous teachers, are those people who are righteous who know the truth and tell the truth and are hated by the 10%. So This is a teaching that eventually started to kind of permeate me. This and other teachings. I mean, other than that, reading about Marcus Garvey, reading about Malcolm X, these were heavy influences on my life, even though at that point I wasn't ready to really fully accept those things. But once I got into those walls, stuff was starting to become a lot more clear for me. And I did realize at that point that I needed that spiritual path. So going into prison, I fully committed myself before I went to before I got incarcerated. When I knew that I was getting incarcerated is when I fully committed myself to Islam. And so once I got in, um, I started going and being around the different brothers and learning things from these brothers. But what happened is that I started getting pushed into a leadership position. I was learning quickly. I guess I was charismatic, young cat. Now, keep in mind, you got children. You got people that's been in prison for 30, 40 years. And on top of that was the Lucasville riots. That happened while I was incarcerated.
Mm.
And so a lot of what happened with the Lucasville riots is a lot of people who were classified highly started getting shipped out to different institutions, one of which was the one I was in. So I started becoming familiar and associated with a lot of different hardcore criminals because I think I might have been a high status or something like that, but I wasn't what they were. But as I started learning fast and people started noticing how my character and things of that nature, and not only that, but the people who were coming in from the outside would see me and, how I was positioning myself. The prison officials would see me and how I was dealing with people. So I got pushed into a position that's called an Amir. An Amir is basically a leader that takes direction from another leader. You can't call it, which is an imam, but you can't call it under the prison guide, the prison rules, the prison Muslims, as they say. You couldn't be an imam because that you have to be free to do that. You have to be able to reach people outside of your prison. So if you're in prison, you can only be an Amir. And so I was actually voted as an Amir. So at 23, 24, I was leading probably about 1,000 Muslims within a prison environment. And we're talking from cats that was younger than me, 18, 17 to 60, 70, 80 years old, who were basically taking direction from me. And it was actually a very positive time and productive time because my mentality, even though I was locked up, my mentality was never to be, I never looked at myself as an inmate. I looked at myself as a prisoner. And I knew that God willing, I would be out. And so I was always preparing myself to be out. So I never got sucked into the prison environment. So I was meeting, I was talking with people from the outside, bringing in speakers, bringing in people to initiate programs within the prisons that I was at. So it was actually a very productive time, and I learned a lot, and I dealt with a lot, because once again you're dealing with people who will kill for Islam.
Mm.
But and so you know I would have people walking around with me as bodyguards, to help make sure that other factions didn't do anything to me. I actually would have meetings with Aryan brothers, and, trying to avoid riots because of the Lucasville situation. You had a lot of people still there who wanted to have more riots. So I would have to stop that stuff. I would have to talk to prison officials, warden, assistant warden, on different topics regarding their culture inside of the prison system. So it was very interesting while I was there. It eventually got to me to a point where, um, once I got close to coming home, I didn't want to be strapped with that responsibility anymore because I wanted to focus on what I needed to do and my plans once I got out.
Mm-hmm.
probably after my third 3.5 years in. And granted, I'm only 24 years old. I mean, I got out when I was 26. So, I wound up getting sent to another institution, which was a low security institution where I could kind of focus myself on, coming home and some of my plans. And at that point, I was actually given given an opportunity to speak there. And once I did that, the Amir who was at that institution asked me to become the leader of that institution, and I had to turn it down because it's like I'm going home. I can't be
Right.
be doing this. So I had been talking to people about real estate, about getting into that field, hearing that it was wide open at that point. At this point, we're talking 95, 96. So real estate was really starting to pick up for the African American community at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And people were getting insights into how to, get money in the real estate business. So I was 100% on that plane, on that train. So when I did get home at 96, um, I got right into it. I had a friend who had recently came in probably a year before me, who put me into a position as a loan officer. And I had a parole officer at that point. And, of course, my parents, grandparents wanted me to get a job, but I was pretty much focused on real estate. But in the meantime, I'm not making any money. I think my guy was probably giving me maybe $200 a week or something like that, crazy. I'm taking the bus there, but I'm focused on what I know is going to make me successful. So after about 6 months of doing this, I started closing loans, and you had to take your tests to your parole officer. And so once I started closing deals, I was doing something like maybe 10 deals a month or something like that, and taking these texts to my parole officer. My parole officer wound up disengaging me off of parole. He didn't take me all the way off, but he basically put me in a position where as long as you don't do anything, you will never hear from me again until you're off parole. And actually,
Mm.
he asked me for a job. He wanted to know if he could do what I was doing because I was bringing in maybe, 6, 7 thousand, and I'm doing this like 3, 4 checks. So, that's when I started moving in a positive direction after I got out, um, and I started really seeing things change for myself by getting involved with that. I was still involved with the Muslim community once I got out, and I was also I got engaged probably a year after I was home. So that's when things started to pick up. That's when I was still not self-employed at this point. I was still working for a mortgage company at this point. But in the year 2000, I was doing so well in that the company that I was working for, I started out working for some brothers, and then I wound up getting a job with a company called Colony Mortgage, which is in Eaton Circle or something, downtown Superior, Eaton Square, Eaton Building, something like that. Um, and so I did so well with them that they gave me a satellite office in Akron to just basically manage and have to myself. And so there were a couple people there in the Akron office that wanted to break off from that and do our own thing. So there were two white cats, and then uh, myself and the brother that introduced me to real estate. We formed a mortgage company called American Investment Mortgage in 2000. So we broke off from the company that we were working for. We all put something like $20,000 down a piece to start the business, and we started out in a mortgage company, and it did pretty well. It did very well, in fact. But after 3 years is when the change and the shift in the mortgage company started to come, in the mortgage business started to come, and the real estate business started to come. Of course, it was still some years before it actually bottomed out. It was like maybe 2009, but we started to see this shift happen earlier. And so we wound up, and then we had creative differences as well. So it lasted for about 3 years,
Mm.
and then we broke off from that. But at that same time, I was buying real estate myself, and I was also forming other businesses. I had a home inspection company, um, and I also started a little bit later. I started the landscaping company, and I was had a contracting business as well. So I had, different irons in the fire at that point. So the, I could take that loss, and still I was still able to manage and move on with that. But that's kind of the early story of, of how I got to this point, working in different prison.
Bro, let me just say, even when you was in the street hustling, everything you touched seemed to work. everything, everything was producing,
Yeah,
which just speaks to, like you said, you had that desire to be this thing, and everything you talked about. Again, and I sit here just in awe, because we know we just scratched the surface on a lot of stuff that happened,
right.
but that you're able to be in this position that you are now, highly respected in the community. Like I said, you've been slinging them grass clippings and everything around, and
Yeah,
snow, and you and your brother, and them your
yeah,
company's brothers,
right,
and all that kind of stuff for years. And if people knew you, that's what they would know now, right? This they know Idris now.
right.
But to get to this point, you went to go through all those things, and I think you would probably agree that your prayer was actually answered,
Yes,
right?
sir.
When you said, "Take me out of this,"
Yeah,
and God said, "Okay, but you had to go this way first, though." And
yeah,
as you go over here, learn some things,
yeah,
and like you said, it was fascinating, in the correction system that you were elevated that way at that young. I understand it's a very serious position. They don't
yeah,
take it lightly, and they don't trust a lot of folks with that. And here you are running the things, right?
yeah,
So it speaks to your character that's always inside of you, that your parents and your grandparents put in you. So again, as you sit now with so much to say, I'm just sitting here listening, like, yo, keep talking. Go ahead, just keep talking, just keep rolling, let it roll, because I know you need to get this out of you
sure.
because you've been wanting to tell this piece for so long, and hopefully somebody who's listening will like, yo, this is amazing. I got time to change my life. There's opportunities, there's been
Yeah,
near misses, there's been, like you said, if you had done what you normally would have done, we probably would be having this conversation.
right.
That turn through the playground, up, down through the hill, up the playground. Everybody know that run.
Yeah.
Put you in this conversation right now, which is amazing. So now, where are you now? You got the business, like you've been doing lawn care and landscaping for, I don't know, decades at this point.
Mhm.
Where is Idris now in the community? Are you still involved at the mosque locally? Are you in leadership? What are you doing now?
Well, that's interesting. Now, so I've had the landscaping company now for 17 years. I still have a property management company, which
Mm-hmm.
is called Mirror Management. I still have the home inspection company. I actually started that company back up a couple of years ago. Um, so I still have that company as well. And what I want to expand into, what actually another company that I had was I did I had a car wash detail company that I want to that I'm starting with a partner, and my wife and I are also trying to start a health food store, something like that sells bowls and smoothies and things like that for some healthy food, because that was a very key component to my longevity as well. Just changing my diet.
Change your diet.
So I
Mm-hmm.
changed my diet actually before I came to prison. I stopped eating meat. So I haven't eaten red meat since 1994. So that has helped me at this point in my life. When you get older, man, you put those deposits in when you're younger, man, they pay dividends when you get older. So that
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things that I was able to do to maintain my health. So I want to spread that message. On top of that, man, in the community, I'm actually involved right now with the project to reimagine my playground. I'm gonna have to get a wire power about this here. Zach, can you bring a color in here for me?
Talk the battery out the phone.
Right. Yeah. You bring the song.
Well, so you're talking about reimagining the playground.
Yeah.
We all know and love.
Playground
So,
area. So, we're going to put actually put a $60,000 proposal together to change the whole playground around. To change the whole playground around, to add space to it, add courts to it, possibly add a tennis court, and to reimagine the reimagine the reimagine the both areas or both sides of it.
mm-hmm.
So we're trying to put that together. So yeah, we're trying to do that just to, and not only that, but we want to give recognition or to make it known the history of the area that we were raised in. Because of course we know that that was in the 60s, the late 50s, early 60s. That was the only area that blacks were allowed to move to was President's Row where we lived at. So we
President's Row.
lived
Mm-hmm.
to that area. Um, And so we actually have a very deep history right in that neighborhood that we grew up in that a lot of people are really not aware of, even that live in Maple Heights, are not really aware of. We couldn't come out of that area. So I want to do some things to bring recognition to that. And the start of that is in basically just starting to revitalize the area. Bring some attention to it, bring some information to the rest of the city through that project. I want to use that as a catalyst to, bring light and attention to that because it's really been just so deprived since we left it. So
It's tough to watch, bro. I'll be honest with you. I come home like, what could you bring here? What would thrive? I mean, there's so many open areas. I mean, Randall Park is now Amazon East. You
right,
know, that's the only thing that could have made it over there, right? Is
exactly,
Amazon
right,
all that space. And I'm just like looking around, like, what business would make it here in Maple Heights? I ain't worried about Cleveland most. I'm worried about my neighborhood, right? What would do it? I have no clue what would
right.
survive. Don't
One
know.
thing that I've been talking to the city about is just buying some land and starting a composting business. That's such a wide open business in the city, or just in general. The
Mm,
margins on these businesses is crazy because, you bring stuff to it. You actually bring materials to be composted to a like a Kirk company, like what's called a Kurtz Brothers, who basically just break all of the stuff that you bring to them down and create mulch. And it's really like not only is it free, but you pay them to bring it. You pay them to compost the stuff down that they bring in, and then they make mulch and resell it. So
mm.
we just break it down, color it, resell it. So it's a very profitable business, but it's only one black-owned company that does this in the city.
Hmm.
So actually in the middle of making a proposal to the city to get some land to be able to start a composting and mulching business. So that's another thing that we're trying to do as well. So we have a few things that we're looking forward to, and there is a book that I'm trying to write as well that I want to get put together, and maybe you can help me with that. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. As I told you at the Playground Hood Reunion Cookout that you host and run, that I need you in this King Conversation book, and we can definitely get that. That's an easy win.
yeah,
Again, there's so much more to what you've got to say, and then inside of there's so much wisdom. I'm listening to you, and the peace and calm and maturity and power in your voice, although calm. And you've been this way since forever. Just real, yeah. Don't let Damon fool. I mean, sorry, Idris fool you. That he will take you out back in the day. But
oh,
anyway,
okay.
he ain't him no more. So, but that demeanor that you have now is just so, like you said, I see why people are putting you in positions of power, because you're a calming force, a moving force. But that's just awesome. So I'm glad that as a king, let me just say that about that for you to keep pressing with that. As we wrap down, as I told you before, it's time for the King's Decree. This is the opportunity for you to leave that piece of wisdom for the kings out here and those listening to this amazing story of recovery and acceleration and ascending. It's not over yet, but what is your King's Decree?
My King's Decree would be learn about yourself, create not self-knowledge, seek self-knowledge, learn about yourself, because self-knowledge creates self-love, and self-love births self-confidence. One thing that I always realized as a youngster is that this world, the society that we live in, was at one time somebody's vision. It at one time was not here. What we see was at one point not here. And it took someone who had self knowledge, self love, and self confidence and no fear to be able to manifest things into what we see today. And we see that happening now with our young people, but we need a lot more of that. So, we need to study our history, learn about ourselves, be true to ourselves, and that's going to create that love, which is going to create that confidence for us to start building.
Mm. Well, Idris, I thank you so much for coming on. Anytime, brother. We will follow up on the book stuff and continue blessings to you and your journeys and your efforts. Like you said, you're right where you need to be, and we're glad that you're there. So we will chop it up later.
Okay, thank you, my brother. I appreciate you and love you, man.
I love you too, bro.
Okay.
All right, so here's my King's Decree. First of all, that was amazing. Again, I'm sorry for those who didn't understand it. That thing was deep. Here's my King's Decree to you. My King's Decree is that find people around you who will hold you accountable, who will pour into your life, and who will speak over your life, speak positivity in your life, and will allow you to do the same. If today was an example of how many times I have walked into a space and someone had something to say to me. It happened today. I walked into a cupcake store, and the lady was the owner. She was all excited about it, and I have an affinity for cookies. If you know my story, I'm down for the bakeries and stuff. And I don't know her from Adam. She didn't know me, but the ministry and communication and spirit passing and encouragement that happened today for about 25, 30 minutes while she was opening was what I needed today. So as a king, sometimes we have to be quiet and receive what someone has to say. I had to sit here and be quiet and listen to Idris affirm me. Not easy to do. Not easy to do for a king to have someone say something nice to you about you that's genuine, and you have to receive it. There's no fighting. There's no answer. There's no retort. Just receive it, because you probably needed it, right? I needed that conversation today. She took me on some trips. She made a couple of comments, and here's what I'm leaving with this. I'm probably had to speak on this one. This is a good one. She said to me that your success is waiting on you. You've already paid the price with pain, loss, knowledge, failure, recovery, late nights, long nights, giving up, sacrifice. You have already paid the price for your success. Now it's time for you to go get it. That sounds like undeferred to me. That sounds like undeferred. And again, I ain't know her. So anyway, my King's Decree is get some people around you who are going to hold you accountable and be accountable to someone else, and lift them up as well. Some king somewhere needs you to go get his crown and put it back in his hand and say, bro, help me fix your crown, which is how this whole conversation started. King, go get your crown. It's over there somewhere. And remind yourself who you are, who you were created to be. I've just heard from Idris, who you've been manifested to be. That is my King's Decree. And I'm out. And as always, you can reach your dreams with a step ladder, then they're probably too low. I'm out.